Hey guys, so what brings me out to the range today is a comparison I want to work on between two pretty brand new guns, both new to the market for 2015, both introduced at SHOT Show, and both of them I have featured in recent videos individually. But I do want to do a comparison side by side because to me it's really a no-brainer to do it. And those two guns are, number one, the SIG P320 Subcompact and the FNS-9 Compact from FNH. These two guns are so similar in so many ways. Obviously, in this case, they are both chambered in 9mm, both available in others. They're both available in 40, and the P320 is also available in SIG 357. Very, very similar sized. Exact same capacity of 12 rounds. Very similar in terms of all of their features and their function. Very similar in terms of where they're competing in the market. And I thought comparing these two guns is really something I just have to do. So what I'm going to try and do without being overly scientific about it is sort of give a good look at how these two guns are the same and how they're different. And a lot of that's going to have to do with measurements and weights and specifications and all that good stuff. But a lot of it is going to just be touchy-feely, subjective information from me about how it feels to shoot each one of these guns, what I like better about one versus another in one aspect, and maybe what I like better about that other one versus the other one in a different aspect. So a lot of it's going to be very subjective. Without wasting too much more time, let me get some targets set up out here, and I'm enjoying a beautiful day. This is the first time this year I've been out in short sleeves, so I'm very happy about that. And let's get some rounds downrange. Start looking at what's the same and what's different between these two guns. All right, so here's something that looks a little similar and is very similar between these two guns. Here they are laid out on the table with the 3 magazines. Now the SIG Sauer does not come with 3 magazines, it comes with just these 2. So it comes with 2 12-round magazines. I've also brought a 15-round magazine that came with the compact sized. It is also fully accepted in the subcompact, so you can use it. It just sticks out a little bit. I talked about that before, so I bring it along. Makes range trips a little easier when you've got more magazines with more capacity. The FNS-9C comes with these 3 magazines. It comes with 2 12-round magazines. One has the flush base plate, one has the pinky extension base plate, and one has the large base plate because that's a full 17-round magazine. So, slight advantage to the FNS in terms of potential capacity and provided magazines. You get 3 magazines versus 2, and one of those magazines is an extended 17-rounder. So I'm going to load up some mags and get shooting these things. I can tell you that it's going to be hard to pick a winner between these two guns. I can tell you that already. So I'm probably not going to, if you're thinking that at the end of this video you're going to be presented with a here's the one you need to buy type of conclusion, I doubt it. Because neither one of them is, you know, it's not that, I don't want to say it, neither one of them is better than the other in that way, but they're both so good. So I'm going to talk about the things that make them different, And some of those differences may appeal to people in different ways. So just because something's different between these two guns doesn't mean it's negative or positive either way. But I will give you my opinion, as I always do, whether it's negative or positive to me. And then you can decide for yourself. It's days like this that I'm really glad I have the Uplula mag loader. As many times as I use this thing on camera, they should be sending me free ones. But no. If I remember, I'm trying to remember now whether the SIG magazines load a little easier all the way to the tippity top. Find out here in a minute. I was thinking between the two, one of these loaded really easy, although those two 12-round magazines for the FNS loaded without any problem. And that's got to be it. Yeah. All right. So, yeah, understandably they both get a little bit stiff when you're putting that last round in there. But you don't mind. Some magazines get stiff when you're putting the last 3 or 4 in. That's something I will be critical of. All right, mags are loaded. Let's get shooting. All right, let's just do a little bit of slow, concentrated fire. First with the FNS-9C. I'm at 10 yards. I've got an orange dot on my target. Give me an aim point, a little more of a precision point. And let me just do some relaxed shooting offhand and kind of remind myself what this gun feels like to shoot it. And then I can talk about that. I'll shoot the SIG the same way. And trying to compare those differences. First, FNS-9C. One of the things I love is the reset on this trigger. I'm shooting hand loads right now that I normally use for competition. So I know they're good and I trust their accuracy, but they're a little different in every gun. Because yeah, it looks like I threw some wild ones there, didn't I? So FNS-9, and I'm using the Pinky Extension magazine. And it's important to note that because the overall feel, the overall ergonomic experience with this gun is going to change with each of the 3 different magazines that are included with it. So I've got the Pinky Extension Pinky Rest magazine on there, which I think is my favorite. I do like being able to get, normally I don't mind a dangling pinky, but it is nice having that little rest. Gun shoots flat, snaps back to a sight picture really quick. You could do, second shots come very fast. The ergonomics of this gun are just really good. It feels very good in the hand. It has a fullness feeling, and the aggressive stippling on the grip, really grabs into the palm of your hand and your fingers. I love the way they did the front strap. I've talked about that before. That really helps control the gun when you're shooting it. It makes a big difference. Yeah, it's just it's a pleasure to shoot. The FNS-9 is just a pleasure to shoot. Okay, 6 Hour P320 Subcompact. Let's try the same thing. This gun also, very much just like the FNS-9C, this gun it's a sweet little shooter. It shoots flat, much flatter than you would expect from a gun its size. This gun is less full in the hand, but it's also very comfortable, and it has a different grip. So there's a lot of difference between the way these two guns feel to hold them. Both have very good ergonomics, but they're very different. They're differently designed. The SIG is thinner, and I'll do measurements later and quantify that for you, but the SIG grip is thinner and flatter. Sight picture is almost virtually identical between these two guns. So you've got three dots of about the same size and same sight radius. So there's essentially no difference in the sight picture for each one of these guns. The SIG seems to print a little bit higher than the FNS. You have to avoid the takedown lever a little bit with your forward thumb. If you're a thumbs forward shooter like I am, you're going to have to get in the habit of putting your thumb underneath. Otherwise, that's going to be really annoying while you're shooting. What else? Magazine disconnect, mag release button on the SIG Sauer is superior, in my opinion, to the one on the FNS-9C. FNS-9C, because they flattened it down for a carry gun, which they did a great job of, they made it a little harder to dump the empty magazine. The SIG is really good. Okay, so after a day at the range with these two excellent small handguns, the FNS-9C, the SIG Sauer P320 Subcompact, my first thought is almost sensory overload. You know, there's just so much to compare about these two. They're so similar in so many ways and so different in so many ways. And I'm gonna think about it a little bit so that I can hopefully articulate my thoughts a little better with you. But I will say that if you if you woke up one morning and either one of these guns was the only one you had access to, you're doing okay. Either one of these is an excellent choice for a carry gun or a home defense gun. They're both extremely reliable. In the hundreds of rounds I've put through each of them, I've not had any kind of failures of any kind. They are both pretty accurate in terms of what I expect in a subcompact gun. I did some 25-yard shooting. I'll share that with you later. They are both very good at handling the recoil. They both shoot flat. I would have to say, and this is just perception, but I want to say this now while it's still fresh in my mind from shooting, that it feels to me like the SIG is a little softer, shoots a little flatter than the FNS. The FNS-9 is a little more snappy with the same ammo. The SIG seems to absorb that a little bit better. There's a lot of the difference between these two guns is in the grip. The FNS has a larger grip than the small, and that's important to point that out. This is the small on the SIG Sauer Subcompact. It's available also in a medium and a large. So anything I say about the size of the grip, take that into consideration, is that can be altered. The FNS, the trigger reach is a little bit more than it is on the SIG Sauer. SIG Sauer is a really small trigger reach. I can get what I consider too much trigger if I want, because you know, I'm going to start pulling my shots left or pushing my shots left if I get a whole lot of trigger in there. So I have to actually kind of govern myself on how much trigger. The FNS fits my hand a little better in terms of trigger reach. I get right at that sweet spot where I like to have my finger on the trigger. The SIG Sauer trigger is a better trigger though. The SIG Sauer trigger is lighter, it's smoother and crisper, and it doesn't have quite as long a travel. And the reset is phenomenal. The reset on the SIG is as good as any, just about. It's almost as good, and I'm going to have to bring out my P226 Extreme with the short reset trigger on it one day and compare these two, because it's almost that good. And the trigger on the FNS is a good trigger, but side by side, the SIG, hands down, is a better trigger. The FNS did a much better job of streamlining the controls on the pistol. They both have about the same controls. They're both ambidextrous in terms of the slide stop. The FNS has ambidextrous mag release. 6 hours reversible. But where the one real difference is, I probably should talk about this inside, is those takedown levers. So the takedown lever is really one big difference on the outside of the pistol. I'll talk about that in more detail later. The bore axis on the SIG Sauer is substantially higher than it is on the FNS. And yet, as I've already said, the SIG feels like a softer shooter to me. It handles the recoil better than the FNS does, which is interesting, very interesting. As far as what's provided with each of these guns, it's kind of a tie because they each give you something the other guy doesn't. So I guess it depends on which is important, which is more important to you. SIG Sauer gives you a holster, which I used today extensively, and I appreciated it a lot because I do like to have a holster to slip my gun into when I'm not shooting it. FNS-9C, FN does not provide a holster, and this gun is so new that they could still be a little hard to find. So, you know, certainly an advantage there if having an immediate holster is important to you. They both provide two 12-round magazines. They're both excellent quality magazines. The FNS provides an additional 17-round magazine with this grip extension, which basically gives you the grip, the exact same grip as the full-sized FNS-9. And then you get the pinky extension. So you get 3 magazines, and each one is a different configuration. I kind of like that because it allows you to try each one out and find out which one you like the best, so you can buy more of that type. Like I say, SIG gives you just the 2 12-round magazines with the subcompact, but they're extremely good magazines. They're Mekgar magazines. I like the access you have at the bottom of the grip to be able to pull those out if you needed to do an assisted withdrawal of the magazine. If you have a full size with a 17-round or the compact with a 15-round, in this case, this is the 15-round magazine from the compact, they will fit and function perfectly in the subcompact. So you can come up with extra magazines with higher capacity that way. Let's get these two pistols back on the workbench, look at specifications and measurements and weights, and get some more thoughts on their similarities and their differences. Okay, so here we have them. 2 very similar, very competitive offerings, one from SIG Sauer, one from FNH. Side by side, you can see just how close they are in all their proportions. But let's talk about some of the specs, weights and measures, and see what the numbers say about the similarities and about the differences between these two guns. The FNS-9C, which is here on the right, weighs in at 1 pound 7.4 ounces. The P320 Subcompact on the left here weighs in at 1 pound 8.8 ounces. So just a little bit more weight, about another ounce, Not even 1.5 ounces, just a little over 1 ounce more. The height of these two pistols, again, as you can see, is extremely close. The FNS-9 Compact is 4.579 inches tall. That would be from the top of the rear sight all the way to the bottom of the grip. The SIG P320 Subcompact is 4.695. Again, these numbers are very close, a little bit shorter on the FNS. Okay, so let's compare some other numbers like thickness of these two guns. They look very similar, and they actually are very similar, but there's some small differences. For the FNS-9C, that dimension is 1.231, and that's their published dimension. The SIG P320 Subcompact, at its widest point, 1.260. So it's a little wider, but not by much. And I'll tell you, the culprit is right here. I've talked about it before, and I don't want to harp on it too much, but this takedown lever is way thicker than it needs to be, in my opinion. Another important thickness measurement is the thickness of the grip itself. So the part that you've got to wrap your hand around. How thick is that? So on the FNS-9C, that is 1.215. So the part here that you've got to get your hand around, 1.215 inches, again almost 1.25 inches. On the SIG, 1.1 even, so 1.100. That's a relatively significant difference, and you do definitely feel that difference. It's over 100 thousandths, that's almost 1/8 of an inch, and yes, you do definitely feel it. So on the FNS-9 Compact, trigger reach is 2.791, and that's my measurement from here to here. On the SIG, now this trigger stays in the same position regardless. That same dimension is 2.557, so pretty distinct advantage here again to the SIG. That's a smaller measurement. Well, I say advantage, I just used that word, but not necessarily. If you've got larger hands and longer fingers, that may be disadvantage, because you may find that you get too much finger up inside the trigger guard and you don't have a good trigger pull. So with this grip, the small, 2.557. About 1/4 inch difference between these two. I did measurements of the trigger pull of both of these guns. I did a 5-pull average, and for the FNS-9 Compact, 6 pounds, 5 ounces was my average. For the SIG P320 Subcompact, 6 pounds, 14 ounces was my average of 5 pulls. A little bit higher, but yet it feels a little bit smoother. Just goes to show that the weight of the trigger pull is not the only thing you need to be concerned about. How does it feel? How crisp is it? How does it break? All that kind of stuff is going to make it feel much different than just the pound measurement. Now, one of the differences that is very subjective but may be interesting to you is the difference in the way these two guns feel with the different magazines. Now, we talked about the different magazines that come with the FNS-9, and I have kind of gotten to the point where this pinky extension magazine is my favorite. That's the most comfortable grip for me. I don't normally mind a flush mount grip, but this one has this large base plate that really protrudes out in the front. It's got like this foot sticking out, like clown shoes. And what happens is my pinky, in order to go underneath it, it feels like it has to sort of wrap around that, where on most guns, like if I were to take this out, it actually feels a lot more comfortable without it, because my pinky can just sort of sit here in this dead space. When I put that magazine in, that's not comfortable. That feels really weird. So I got to put my pinky under it, and then because of that gap, it feels weird too. So that's a really awkward feel. If they would flatten that to where it didn't protrude like that, I think it would be a lot more comfortable. As it is on the SIG, which is extremely flush with the magazine. And so your pinky, you do whatever you want with it, but it feels comfortable. The FNS has a front Picatinny rail. The SIG does not. Both pistols have both front and rear cocking serrations. They're both very good functionally, and they're both good aesthetically. So I think same there. The sights I had talked about, at least individually on both of these before. The sights are very similar. They're both a 3-dot combat type sight. Neither one of these are night sights. They're both just white dot sights. Night sights are available for each. The one difference between the sights, and they're both steel, so they are both steel material. One difference is in profile. You can see that the FNS has more of a Novak style sloped sight on the rear, and the SIG Sauer has the traditional SIG Sauer sight. Trigger guards are both pretty similar and pretty similar sized on these two guns. They're both relatively rounded. The SIG is more rounded and a little more streamlined. It curves up more at the front. As you can see there on the FNS, you have a little bit of grip texture molded into the front. On the SIG you do not. That's just smooth. But they both allow about the same amount of space, and if you can see here with the triggers both in a full reset position, the SIG actually gives you a little bit more finger space. So if you were wearing a glove or just have big meat hooks, you might have a better chance of getting in that trigger guard on the SIG. What about overall aesthetics and fit and finish? As far as fit and finish goes, materials and workmanship and just overall quality, pretty dead even. We're talking about two of the best firearms manufacturers here with SIG Sauer and FNH. However, I will say that I think overall the FNS-9 has the better overall fit and finish, and mostly because the polymer frame is a better quality polymer frame. This looks like it's a glass-filled nylon or a glass-filled polymer of some sort. It's got a nice texture to it. It's got a quality feel and a quality look. The SIG is that sort of almost, disposable type of polymer, and I talked about that before. That's on purpose. These things are $46 right now if you want to buy a new one. So that's what you're comparing. The nitron finish on SIG Sauers is almost indestructible, and has been with this one so far too. And I love the treatment on the barrel, and the barrel hood never gets scratched up. The barrel itself never gets marred up when you shoot the gun. Most other guns, like this guy, they come with mars and scratches and stuff already on them. So for the finish on the slide, I'm going to have to go with the SIG. All right, let's take a real quick look at the takedown method for each. Start with the FNS-9. FNS-9, I just removed the magazine. I lock the slide back, rotate the takedown lever, let the slide come forward, and right when the slide is back in its even spot or in the home position, you got to pull the trigger and then pull it forward. Off it comes. I'm not going to break down any further than that really, but you have all your traditional parts. It does have a dual recoil spring guide rod assembly, and it is a steel guide rod. To put it back together, you just put the slide back on, lock it back, rotate that takedown lever back up, and there you go. Now the SIG Sauer, the P320, one of the criteria that they insisted on meeting, because I know that they had law enforcement and other customers that wanted them to meet this criteria, is that you do not have to pull the trigger to take this gun down. So the steps are very similar. We lock the slide back, remove the magazine, obviously do all your clearing, rotate the takedown lever, take the tension off the slide, and just simply move it forward. You don't have to pull the trigger. Again, on the SIG also has dual recoil spring assembly, steel guide rod. Now the one big difference here is this is a oval shaped keeper, if you will, that has to be oriented the way it is. If you orient this 90 degrees one way or the other the wrong way, you can actually damage the pistol. So you do have to pay attention to how that's oriented. It's not a round piece. Other than that, pretty much same. Talked about the fire control group being the actual gun. So put this one back together, same thing. We just put the slide on, lock it back, rotate the takedown lever back to its upright position, and you're done. When I was out at the range, I was talking about having shot these things at 25 yards, and I did, and I promised I would talk about that. So I'm talking extremely briefly, because neither one of these are anything to brag about too much at 25 yards. They're pretty small guns with short barrels. Alright, so let's take a look. First we have the SIG P320 Subcompact at 25 yards. I'm not going to go over group by group, but the best group was this one here, and that was Blazer Brass. And this 5-shot group measures 1.786 inches in diameter. And again, that was Blazer Brass at 25 yards through the SIG. Now the best group through the FNS-9 was this group up here. It's a much bigger group, 2.791 inches, so it's like a full inch bigger in size. And that was actually tall ammo, believe it or not. So before you just look down your nose at that steel case cheap stuff, maybe not. So that was tall ammo, 5-shot group. Those two were pretty impressive. 2.791. So on that day, in those conditions, with this shooter, that was the results. Accuracy advantage goes to the SIG. All right, so there we are. A comparison of two very, very fine compact pistols. The P320 Subcompact, the FNS-9 Compact. Both 12-rounders. Both very similar in size, very, very similar in performance. If I absolutely had to choose right now, which one? I'd have to go with the SIG.